And joining us now, she is the head coach at Austin Peay, entering her fifth season, averaging over 30 wins a year as head coach at Austin Peay. Was a standout player, two-way star player at Louisville during her playing days, and of course has had an incredible playing career and coaching journey, which we'll talk to her about. And that's Kassie Stanfill making her in the circle debut. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. Let's talk about your fall here. How do you feel your fall has gone for your team here so far?
Yeah, we think for Team 38, so 38th team, obviously, of Austin Peay softball, we are excited with what we see. We have 10 new bodies, freshmen, transfers, and we feel like the new blood is exactly what we needed. We have a lot of energy. We get along well, just as like a group of 24 women. Um, and you know, we won some games, which was nice. We competed in our Red and Black World Series. It was good to see them going against one another and being extremely competitive there. So, we can't complain. We're excited. We have things to work on as always, but we're excited as long as we keep the climb. We're ready for the spring.
It's a big year for the university as well as obviously your program because you're going into the ASUN. You're playing in the ASUN conference this year after so many years in the OVC. Just talk about that process from when you find out that you're going to change leagues and then that transition. How do you go into a transition like you're currently doing?
Yeah, we found out last year. Early last year was when we announced it. We got to celebrate it. We knew it was our last year in the OVC, and then the transition in. It's kind of one of those things. Where do we match up, right, with other universities in the ASUN? And that's facilities, budgets, salaries, all of the above. And so our administration has done a great job of saying, okay, this is where we are. This is our goal. We're just going to have to gradually build to get to where we need to be. Showing though that they're like willing and very open to like, okay, hey, yeah, we do travel more in the ASUN. It's a little bit further from our OVC opponents. Those little things, I think, year one, it's we don't know what we don't know. So we're kind of going in, blind, really. Luckily, we've played a lot of the schools in the ASUN just within our preseason play in the past years. But we're going into this kind of, okay, hey, like, we're driving to Liberty. Let's get to Liberty. How do we perform there? What is their stadium like? Little things like that. So we're ready for the competition. We know that there's a lot of talent in the ASUN. And I think that's what excites us most, honestly.
And it's a league that's been a multiple bid league
Yes.
historically in the past, even as recently as 2 years ago with Liberty and Kennesaw State. And look, this is part of college sports that we're in right now. There's so much realignment going on in college athletics, so it's only fitting you're part of it. So what you look at the league, you mentioned that you're kind of going in blind. So do you kind of wait till the season plays out before you start kind of studying the teams in the league? Because normally when you're in a conference, you pretty much have an idea about the conference mates. That's the beauty of playing conferences. You all know each
Right.
other so well. But now that you're going in new, they don't know you as well, and you don't know them as well. So how do you approach kind of learning the opponents?
Yeah, it just comes down to scouting. And the scouting for conference prep play will probably start sooner than what it normally would. We play SEMO 4 years with me. We knew what we were going to get from SEMO. Like, we knew how their defense was going to work. We knew that they were going to have really good hitters, strong hitters. And then we knew, hey, rise ball, spinny pitcher. Like let's prep for this. Now it's like, okay, we need to know those things probably sooner, make sure we got a good grasp on it. So when it is that week where we're sharing with the team, at least as a staff, we're comfortable and knowledgeable to be able to give them solid information.
Do you have friends or know people in the league coaching wise? Because there have been some members that have joined the league. And so I'm wondering if you've reached out, get some advice. If somebody asked you, hey, this is a good place to eat dinner.
Oh, we do that all the time. Yeah, that kind of comes with it. That comes with it. Luckily, Eastern Kentucky just joined
Yeah.
Jacksonville State. So, like, those are like my people from the OVC. So I know if I ever needed anything, Jana at JSU, I'm like, hey, Jana, I need your help. Like, what do you think? And her little Southern self is like, well, Kassie, this is what we do. So it's good. It's good to know people. And we'll definitely take advantage of that.
No, that's good to hear. I was glad there was a deal there. And it's interesting because we'll get into your career a little bit later on, but you've had a lot of changes in your career too, as a player, into coaching, different coaching in different leagues and things like that. Do you think those experiences you've had will help you in this process as quote another change?
For sure. For sure. I think, Austin Peay is the longest that I've ever been in my career, the longest stint. So, starting year 5, obviously I'm comfortable within the university and what to expect within my program. But that change that I'm used to every three years is essentially us moving to the A-Sun. And I'm ready for that. I think change is good. I think it keeps me personally, I think it keeps me young. So, being the new guy or maybe even like the underdog, that's not a new thing for me. I think that's actually probably when I like strive the most.
Let's talk about a little bit about last year. You won 30 games. When you reflect back on last season, what comes to your mind?
Last season, that's a great question. I think we had a great group of athletes. I think we had a lot of talent. We celebrate the 30 wins, and I think it's great. Not a lot of coaches get that, and definitely don't get it multiple years. So I celebrate those moments. I think Team 37, I think we underachieved. I think again, we had all the talent in the world. And then I think when it came down to it and when it was go time, I think we kind of lacked a little bit of the, I don't know, confidence, experience. And I think we underachieved and we didn't get what we wanted in the end of it. So, with 10 new people, and 14 returners, I'm hoping the returners I know they took it to heart. Like, I know when we got out early in the tournament, right when the game was over, we had our closing statement, and then we had a handful of athletes that are like, what do we got to do to be different? Like, what do we have to do to get to championship Saturday? And that speaks volumes to them because they were angry, right? So now as a staff, it's like, okay, how do we give them the tools to adjust, stay competitive when things aren't going their way and they're getting punched in the gut? Like, how are we going to punch back? So that's what Team 38 is more so focusing on this coming year. We're going to get knocked down, but how are we getting back up and throwing our punches right back at people?
Well, let's talk about your team. Let's start offensively because you do bring back Lexi Osaski, was the OVC Player of the Year, 408
Sure.
average, 13 homers, 46 RBIs. Let's start with her. What makes her such a great offensive weapon and talented player that leads your offense? And then among other players that you think will help lead your offense?
Yeah, she's great. We're blessed that she came back for her 5th year. She'll hold it down at third base. And her offense, what sets her apart is just her confidence. When she gets in the box, she walks in like she's going to do damage. Her teammates have confidence that she's going to do damage. So I think that's the one thing once you get to games, it's as a hitter, it's mentally, can you do it? Right. And like believing that you can, no matter what the pitcher throws, like you're still going to beat her best. Last year was a huge growing year for Lexi. So, in the beginning, in the fall, we had some ebbs and flows. We struggled a little bit. We had a new hitting coach come in, Brianna Hessen. And it was one of those things where new things made Lexi uncomfortable. And once she realized, okay, I'm going to trust the process and not this outcome right now in September, she figured it out. It took some tears. It took some crying sessions in the indoor. But once she figured out her body and she figured out, hey, failure's good. It's going to help me in the long run. She was hands down she was great in the box for us. So we're excited to just continue to build off of that. Our other hitters, my brain goes right to Kylie Campbell. She was our DP last year. So this year, she wants to play. So she's like, Coach, I'll do whatever I can to get on the field. So she's working to get on the field defensively as well. But her stick, I mean, at this point, still she swings it well. She sees the ball. She's a triple threat, all of the above. And we're excited about the new power that we have coming in. Our catcher Mia Clark, she hit for us last year. This year in the fall, she's already like doubled her home runs. She looks more comfortable in the box. So we're excited for the young athletes to kind of come in, get comfortable, and show us what they got.
Pitching staff, obviously, right up your alley there, as we know,
Yep.
with you being the pitching coach. One of the great pitchers, as Louisville will talk about. But how's the pitching staff coming along, and what do you expect from them this year?
Good. Yeah, we're definitely still going to pitch by committee. We have 4 arms, which is great. In the past, pitching's like one of those things where we end up with 2 pitchers when it's go time. That could still happen, but having more people that can put their arm in a circle, it makes us feel a little bit better. We have a returner, Jordan Benefill. She's great for us. She has, chunk of the innings every year. She's continuing to get better every year. What we saw from her this fall was probably her best fall that she's had. She's picked up her speed. Her movement is still there. So we're excited for her to kind of make her debut in the A-Sun. We have Samantha Miner. She's a sophomore. We have Ashley Martin, who's a transfer from Michigan State. And then we have Emberly Nichols, who's a freshman from Clarksville. So a staff as a whole, we have a mixture of different speeds, different pitches. We have pitchers that work, down in the zone, some that are going to work up in the zone. I think overall, it's just a good combination where we can get some good matchups and keep hitters off balance.
Where did your philosophy going by, committee staff, the multiple arms? I mean, that's coming around the sport now. It's a little different than it was when you played, where there was, you only needed 1 or 2 arms. For you, when did you adapt to that philosophy?
Sheesh. Probably when I got here. Okay. My first year here, Morgan Rackle, she's now Team Canada. She's a great pitcher. We had 3 pitchers at the time. 3 pitchers at the time. Morgan, we knew could get us through those 7 innings. And then we had Kelly Mardones and Kelsey Gross, who they were going to throw that second game for us. And that would be kind of a joint effort. And every year that we rolled through, we just kind of knew, hey, like our goals for one pitcher to get 9 outs and someone else to close the door. So I would definitely say here, this fall, we even tried like every 6 outs. Like, what does that look like? What is that going to do to a lineup? Some pitchers loved it. Some pitchers were like, Coach, I need more than 6 outs. Like, I got to get in my groove. But it's definitely something we're playing with.
There's so much information out there. There's advanced analytics out there. I don't know if you're one that uses advanced analytics or not, because I know that's starting to kind of jump into softball like it has in baseball. There's more data now than there was back when you play. There's more video now than back before.
Sure.
How much of all of that plays into that role too, that, hey, you need multiple arms because everybody's got a book on your pitchers nowadays?
Yes. I think last year was like the first year where our pitchers were like, oh man, we started using Synergy, right? Synergy is a video where you can break down and as hitters, we go through the pitchers that we're going to face, and it's quick clips, right? And our pitchers so happened sitting in on one of our hitting sessions, and one of my kids, she looked at me and she was like, so people do this to us? And I was like, yes, like they know what you're throwing, every count, where your ball is going to go. And so it kind of made them realize like people are ready for us. Like they know our windups, they know our sequencing. Now it's just, me versus the batter. And maybe the batter has the upper hand, I don't know. It depends on how they prepared.
You are a two-way player, and we're going to get to that story because it's a fascinating story that I've really wanted to talk to you about for a while because I followed your career. It's unique. But you were a two-way player, and I'm always fascinated by former players that go into coaching as two-way players because you have more options.
Yes.
You know the offensive game, you know the pitching game. How did you decide to get more towards the pitching side of things? And then how does that evolve as far as your style of coaching? Are you hands-on with all aspects of the game? Do you let your staff run the offense, or you just handle pitching? Just take us through that kind of evolvement there, because it's a unique background that you have.
So when I first started coaching, when I was at middle, when I was figuring out what I wanted to do, I didn't want to do pitching. Like I was like, I'm good. I've done this my whole life. Like I'm defense and hitting. Like that's gonna be what I'm going after. Megan Rhodes Smith, she was the pitching coach at middle. So it was perfect. Like Megan had that. I could do the defense and hitting. Like it was everything I wanted. Obviously I knew I could still go in and learn from Megan and give tidbits if I wanted to. But we were good. And so after that, it was okay, what's next? Right. And so looking for a job and how do you sell yourself and what you can bring. I went to Ball State as still defense, right? So I was like outfield. I'll go and I'll work with the outfield. Craig Nicholson was there. And that's the way we did it. He did the offense and the infield. I did the outfield, and we had 2 grad assistants, volunteers that were pitching coaches. Once he left, that's when Tyra Perry came in, and she was like right on the phone with me. We're chatting. I was either going to go to Western and be the pitching coach there, or she was going to come to Ball State and I was going to just stay on as the pitching coach at Ball State. It's kind of how that worked. And so she ended up coming, and I'm like, I can do it. Like, I will be your pitching coach. I know these pitchers. Like, let's get after it. At Ball State, we had a great staff. They already knew me, so it was an easy transition. I'm sure a lot of learning and growing with that group of individuals. We had a great year. We enjoyed ourselves. Next thing you know it, I'm now a pitching coach for Tyra Perry. And she's like, hey, like, I want you to be associate head with me at Illinois. Like, let's go. You'll be in charge of the pitchers. And so technically that's when I started, right? Was with Tyra, and she trusted me with the staff. She was very hands off. They are yours. Like, do what you need to do with them. We'll just work and talk about like in game stuff, right? And so she really gave me a lot of confidence in what I was doing. Growing up, I went to Sherry Kemp, so I knew all the drills. I have a lot of knowledge. Like, I was with her all the way through college, starting at even like 8 to whatever, 20, whatever. So I knew I could do it. It was just getting back into the joy of being in the bullpen. When I took the job here, it's one of those things, pitching coaches are always wanted and needed, right? Like hot commodity, always. And so I took the job, and I'm like, I'm going to stay with the pitchers, and I'm going to get some skilled people that can handle hitting and defense. And so I've done that every year since. I take that back. Brianna Wonderly did pitching for a couple years. She was a byproduct of me from Illinois, right? And so again, I could pop into the bullpen, sit in, have conversations, open, fluid. So it was like I was still in there. It was good. Now, full-time pitching, but even as a head, you still have your hands in everything. Team defense, I'm always a part of. Now that we're in individuals, I'm at every individual, outfield, infield. I try to make majority of the hitting. You know, as a head coach, being a pitching coach, it's more so, how do you handle your pitchers, give them the attention, the one-on-one, and still get and reach your other student athletes. And it just comes down to time management, in my opinion. But I've learned that being present and being involved in all facets is extremely important as a head coach. So that's just kind of the way I've gone about it. My staff is great here. I tell everyone up front, like, look, I'm not one who's going to just sit and be quiet. I'm going to be a very talkative, like hands-on coach. That's just how I am. And luckily I have a staff that's comfortable with that. You know, I can walk the infield and throw out a couple key terms, and no one gets their pride hurt, right? Like, everybody trusts everyone. So it's a special connection that we have. I think that's what's needed. You know, the egos are set aside, right? Like, at the end of the day, as a staff, it's our job to make our student athletes better. And so that helps me be able to do that and stay involved, and making sure all of our athletes feel that presence of me.
That's an incredible story. First of all, I forgot you were with Megan Rhodes Smith. She's a friend of the show. She's been on there. What was that like? How competitive? Because she's competitive. How was it with you two in that same staff?
It was great. It was great. We were young. I'll say we were young and dumb, honestly. We we had a great boss. Sunivar, she was our head coach, and she took two young, fresh athletes and was like, "Hey, let's go and try to do something special." And every year we got better, which was exciting. But we were a very competitive staff. We went for a run. I'll never forget. We ran the bridge at Charlotte. It's called the Ravenel, I think. And we're running this bridge as a staff, and I'm not a runner. So I'm hiking up this bridge and I'm going. And I finally said, I was like, guys, I'm stopping at the next like pole. Like, just so you know, I am stopping. And so we get there, I stop. Well, so does everyone else. And Megan looked at me and she was like, I'm so happy you stopped. She was like, I was getting tired. And I was like, well, good. But that just shows how competitive we were. No one wanted to be the first one to just kind of give up. So
Makes sense. That doesn't
yeah,
surprise me. And obviously, she's doing good things now back at her alma mater,
she
Tennessee,
did.
there as the pitching coach. That's a heck of a staff. I mean, that blows me my mind away there looking back on that.
Yeah.
And then obviously Tyra, who we've had on, and the great success she's had. And it's had a huge influence in your career in a lot of ways. You probably wouldn't be where you're at right now without her. What was it about her that just clicked? You mentioned a phone call, but you obviously decided to go with her, and followed her around. What influence does she have on your style of coaching?
I've learned a lot from Tyra. When I first took the job with her at Ball State, we had a year of learning, and it wasn't an easy transition year. Everybody has different transition stories. How did the new team take the new coach and all of that. And our first year together was tough. But I think that the fight of it is what made us tighter, right? We went through things that a lot of other staffs didn't have to go through. Like, how do we keep the peace within the team, and how do we get the team to trust the coaches? And transition year was tough for us, but to make it through that year and then go into the next and have a team that maybe wasn't supposed to go to regionals win a MAC championship and have their first trip to regionals at Notre Dame. It was special, right? And so, we work well together. I'm kind of she's very cool, calm, collective, and I was always like the little spitfire that was gonna say whatever was on my mind. And so it was the yin to the yang, right? And so moving forward, just through my career, Tyra's the first phone call that if anything is happening and I need just like a soundboard, I'm calling Tyra. Hey, this is going on. What do you think I should do? She's extremely intelligent. She does everything and makes every move out of the good of her heart. Like, it's nothing harsh. She's not making a decision because it's out of anger. She's going to be smart. She's going to do her homework. Hey, I think this is probably the best route to go because it's going to keep you happy. It's going to make sure you're doing everything by the book, HR wise. She just has it together. And so she knows that she's my mentor. I think at first when I left her from Illinois, I felt bad, right? Like, I was like, I told this woman I was going to be with her for years. And here I am. I left her to go and coach at Louisville. And I knew that hurt, but it took some time for me to reach out and say, look, this is what I learned from you. I appreciate you, and I want to keep this relationship throughout my whole career. And she's done nothing but be right by my side and like a number one fan of mine.
That's a great story. We're speaking with Kassie Stanfill, head coach Austin Peay here on In the Circle. What got you into playing softball?
Well, my sister's 4 years older. She played softball. So you always want to do what your siblings do, right? And we lived at the ballpark. So Kristen was playing and I would be playing in the mud piles during her games. And then as I kind of grew up and got the age that I could play, Dad was like, let's go, it's your turn. And I just stuck with it.
You're a Tennessee girl. You end up at Louisville. Take me
Yeah.
through, what was it about Louisville that drew you there?
It's great campus. It was one of those things. I fell in love when I went. I took an unofficial visit. My sister and myself, we drove up. It's 2 hours from home. So we went up 65 North, and I just remember pulling in, and they used to have these water tower things. Well, that's what I would call it. And they would say the University of Louisville. And then you get right off, and next thing you know it, you're in like the heart of a city, but like this like sweet campus that loves their athletic teams. And so as soon as I stepped foot out of the car and started interacting with everyone, like I just knew it was the place where I was supposed to be.
Describe that time frame. That was really the glory, one of the best times in Louisville softball history. You made a lot of history while you were there, winning a pair of Big East championships in 06 and 07, four straight NCAA tournament appearances. And then, of course, your senior year, you got to host a regional, part of that team to host a regional for the first time in program history. What was it about that during that time that everything just was clicked?
It was just a great time to be a Cardinal. You know, I don't know. We loved what we did. The administration, they loved, again, they loved athletics. So being able to show up every day and have sweet facility, awesome gear, coaches that loved you and wanted to make you better, it was just a good time. It was a good time to be there. I think we were super eager to continue to be the first. I remember being a freshman, and it's like, hey, we won Big East, and then we're going through, and next thing you know it, we broke the top 25. And so like all of those little milestones were really what kept us hungry. And once you go to your first regional, it was almost like we expected it to do it every single year. So then that's just like the tradition part, which was neat, and Coach Pearsall, she did a great job of building that tradition throughout her career. I was fortunate enough. I had Carol Bruggeman, Karen Marr. We had a solid staff that they were extremely intelligent in the game. And then they just loved on us as student athletes.
Speaking of Coach Bruggeman there, you mentioned her. A lot of people that are listening probably don't realize that she was on that staff and coached you. They know her now either as the color commentator on ESPN doing softball, or in her big role involved with the NFCA. What was Carol Bruggeman, the coach, like?
Every time I see her speak, she's the same. She's the same to me. I can hear her saying, let's go. Come on. You're the slowest team in America. Like, I can just hear her on repeat. But she was fiery. Everything was quick pace. She was going to push you to be your best. And defensively, I know for a fact she's the reason we were what we were. She instilled confidence. She was going to challenge us. Coach B is still my mentor to this day. She's another one that I can call and reach out to, and she's not too busy to answer the phone. And I think that just speaks volumes to who she is as a person.
You were a two-way player. You were an outfielder and a pitcher, and then you suffered an injury. So you didn't pitch your last year. You moved to first base, which at that was when I'll be full disclosure. I started covering, following softball at that time. I was a broadcaster at UCF, student broadcaster. I just started, obviously Louisville, there was ranked. So I was following you, and I noticed it. I was kind of confused because you weren't pitching. And back then nobody had any information. In today's age, we probably would find out what happened, right?
Right.
Back then it was all secretive. So I guess the first question is more as a fan is, well, what happened? What kind of injury happened? And how difficult was that for you to give that up?
Yeah. Well, so injury wise, it was in my elbow. I was a very spinny pitcher, so I wasn't going to overpower you, throw it past you. I was going to rely on a curveball, screwball, and just try to get little mishits. And so, I knew my role, as a pitcher. Like, I knew I wasn't our number one. Like, we had great number ones throughout my whole year or my whole career. So I knew my job was to go in when I was needed and get my outs and get my mishits, and then like go and play outfield because I wanted to be a hitter. And, I just was helping our other people in their arms. And my injury comes along, and it would get to the point where like my hand would go numb. And so we tried all different type of things. We're wearing tape around the elbow, and I would still just get tingling. And, I pushed through it as long as I could. I know my junior year, there were games where Coach P would be like, can you just get me 3 outs? And I'd be like, yes, coach, like I got it. They weren't always the prettiest, but I would do whatever I could to make that happen for them. And so, you know, in my end of the year meeting in my junior year, it was one of those things. It was like, I'm trying to pitch, but I'm injured. So like, how much pitching am I really doing? Like, how much of an asset am I in the circle? I love outfield, and I go and hit all the time. I want to be a hitter. Like, that's what I want. And so junior year, end of the year, I was like, hey coach, like, what are your thoughts on me just not pitching next year? Like, let me just be a position player. And she was okay with it. She was like, I think that's smart. You know, we got some pitchers coming in, like we should be good. And you know, that's what we did. And so all fall, all of my preseason, I was an outfield hitter. So I was left field hitter. And a week before we went to Vegas, in season, Coach B came up to me and she was like, hey Cass, like, have you ever played first before? And I was like, yeah, like when I was like 10. Like, what do you mean? And she's like, yeah, I think we need you to play first. We need, you know, switch Bemis over to third. And if you can do it, like, we're gonna keep you there. And I'm like, coach, whatever for the team, I got you. And so I went there, practice one. Next thing you know, we're playing in Vegas, and I am stuck there. And you know, at first I didn't know how I was gonna feel about it, but first base is fun. You're like in the action every single play almost. And so it was different transition, right? From like pitching to being an outfielder who maybe gets a ball, maybe a game,
Sure.
to then like being involved all the time. So when I look back, I think it was the best thing to happen to me for my senior year. I learned a lot. It just gave me another tool for my coaching career. And then I was just involved, which kept me excited.
Is that where the defensive passion came from?
Yes. Yeah. You know, again, Coach B did a great job of challenging us defensively. And so I think I would probably say that's where it came from. You know, and being able to do multiple positions just helped me stay in it.
When you eventually, and we'll get back to playing, but I'm curious because you talked about you really didn't think about being a pitching coach. You did a pitching coach. When you did to go that route, was there any apprehension because of, you know, of dealing with that injury with the elbow that you're like, I don't want to know if I don't want, was there any apprehension at all? Or did you find it to be just as smooth and joyful as ever before?
As far as going into being a pitching?
Yeah. Was there any apprehension because of that, you know, the way it ended with the injury?
No, not at all. That probably was what happened originally when I first got out, where I was like, well, I haven't pitched in a year, so like, I'm not going to be a pitching coach. But the more I talked and the more, you know, even as like surfing for jobs, you realize like pitching coaches are like unicorns, like everyone needs one. So, you know, it was like, okay, well, maybe I'm silly for not saying I can be a pitching coach. And, you know, over time you realize and you learn and you're like, I'm still good. I still got it. And so that's where I'm at today.
If Kassie Stanfill, the player, is in the same room with Kassie Stanfill, the head coach, how different are they? How would they get along?
I think they'd get along because they're both amazing people. No, I think, yes, I do think they would get along. I think Coach K versus Kassie as a player, I think the main difference would be confidence, just in who I am and what I bring to the table. I think it's hard when you're 18 to 22 years old, and it's like that transition of life for young women, in new environments, and you can, you know, apply too much pressure on yourself or keep your expectations way too high. And I think myself as a player, I was probably very hard and critical. I loved what I did. Every single day I was about it. I just think if I would have found a way to be a little bit more relaxed, I probably would have performed 10 times better on the softball field. And so now moving into as a coach, I think I am more confident in who I am and what I bring. And, you know, I know my weaknesses. And so what my weaknesses are, I make sure other people can help me with that and carry that weight. So yeah, I think confidence is the main thing, the difference of the two. That's a very good question, though.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I'm always curious about that when you adapt from a player to a coach, you know, and and kind of how it changes you, and maybe you look back and be like, wow, if I would have known this now back then, and things or
Oh,
experiences you learned from then that helps you now.
so much. Sometimes I wish, I mean, I'm 35 and I'm like, if I could just go and play now, like what I know now is like, oh, it's so much better than what I knew when I was an athlete.
Hey, look, we still got players like Monica Abbott, Kat Osmer playing, and they're you're similar age.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not on Cat's level though.
No.
So
Well, she's retired again too. So, but Monica's still going strong, and among others, was head coach something you always wanted to do once you got into coaching? Did that ever cross your mind during all your moves?
uh honestly, no. Not in the beginning. I know myself as a person. I'm a very good assistant. I'm a very good assistant coach. And I say that again with confidence, but not, I just know how to be that second person. And I think that's why I was able to stick with Tyra and be her like road dog, through everything. So no, I didn't plan on being a head coach, but when the opportunity came after Louisville, it was one of those things where it was like, I know where I want to be and what my end goal is, or like my dream job. How do I get there? Like, what are the best steps for me to make sure I'm able to finish where I want to finish? And that next step just at the time was like, okay, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to become a head coach. My first year was crazy. I probably wasn't ready mentally. Um, my athletes, I love them for sticking through it with me year one. Because I know for a fact the confidence is better. Just like handling situations are 10 times better. But I just knew it was time to make the jump. So I was ready for my next jump.
And that's the thing. You had a successful was having success as an assistant at not only obviously at Ball State with Coach Perry, but Illinois accomplished a lot. Obviously, you went back to Louisville. What was it about Austin Peay that you felt this was the right time for me to take this particular job to be the head coach?
Well, I actually took another job prior. I made a move. I was in a city for like 7 days, and I had applied to Austin Peay a while ago, probably early in the summer, and nothing came from it. So I'm like, you know what? I'll go be another assistant. I was coming from the University of Louisville, so no matter what I was taking a pay cut. Like, so it was like, okay, that's all right. And the week that I got to that institution, I ended up getting a phone call, and it was from Austin Peay. 3 days prior to that, I was at a Lowe's and I saw someone with a big AP on their hat. And I was like, this is strange. Like, all of those things mean something to me. And so I just remember seeing the AP on the man's hat. And then I remember getting that phone call and I was like, okay. And first phone call went well. Second phone call, hey, can we get you on campus? And then when I got on campus and I met the individuals that I'd be working with, it was one of those things where I was like, maybe I wasn't 100% ready for that jump, like that had me questioning. I knew the people here were going to help me with that transition. And I think that was the most important part of it. Like, I felt comfortable knowing I'm taking this leap of faith, and like they're my safety net, and like they're going to help me and get me through any challenges that I may face.
That's incredible. That's a
Yeah.
great story. I didn't know that. Like, have you thought about what would you be doing if that phone call didn't come?
I guess I'd be an assistant. I don't know.
Somewhere. That's wild. But that's how this industry works, right? Just when you least,
Yep.
some patience. It's wild. That's pretty wild. What's the thing you've learned the most in this time as a head coach now that you know now that you either wish you would have known back then or you just didn't know at the time?
I just think personally I don't know, matured, just grown individually, like personal growth. I think it's a good reminder for me. Maybe my first year I didn't get it, but I know by starting my year 5, our student athletes, and I know we're not supposed to call them kids or children or any of that. I know they're young. They're young adults. And so I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and just tell my staff all the time, is our young adults are going to make mistakes, right? And like, we're essentially like their parents while they're away from home. So like, give them grace. right? Let them be humans. When they make mistakes, yes, there's going to be some sort of consequence depending on what that mistake may be. But give them a little grace, give them a chance to grow, a chance to develop, because no one wants to mess up. And so I think that's like the biggest thing that I've just I don't know, I adapted with, or kind of just over the years, like it's just been a little bit more in my face, where it's like, have grace for everyone. They're 18 to 22 years old. Teach them. That's my job, right? Like, they don't know what they don't know. They're gonna fail. When they do, who's gonna be there to like push them back up and make them feel a little bit better? So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing for me.
Plus, you have the unique perspective, obviously, not only as a former player relating to them, but you've literally been at every scenario as a pitcher, as a hitter, as a defensive player, both positives and negatives that this sport brings, as you know as well as anybody. Mostly a sport that you're going to fail more times than succeed.
For
How much?
sure.
How do all of those experiences you have is you think has helped you as far as a coach and relating to players today?
Yeah, I've already said I'm 35. So when I first got into coaching, I was super close with the athletes. Um, I always say my athletes keep me young, and they keep me young because I let them, right? Like, I stay engaged with them. Like, we have conversations just like as people. So I'm super relatable. And it's a relatable relationship just because they know that I truly care. Like, I just care about them. And so when I think of me as an athlete, and bouncing around, and it's a game of failures, and my coach trying to do any and everything to help me perform on game day. She's like Coach B, I love her. She's like, Cass, you're amazing in practice. What if we wear your practice shirt under the uniform so you can like just think you're a practice? You just get to ball out. And I remember being an athlete and I was like, Coach B, I'm not wearing my practice shirt. Thank you, but no thank you. But it was those little things, like she would leave me a note in my locker, and it was like, just breathe, have fun, and as an athlete, I'd put that in my pocket, and I would have it through, every game that I play that weekend. So those little bits it's what I took into my coaching career, like those little things go a long way, for young females, reminding them like, hey, like, people care about you. Like, you're more than just a softball player. Like, you're a human. Okay. So one, they just need reminders of that, because failure is going to happen. We all know that. Challenges are there. And we all don't get championships, and we don't get rings, and we don't get trophies. And so sometimes that transition can be tough. But it's life. And so it's just, helping them be prepared for life when the tough stuff happens.
Last question to you now, as you get set for the season to get going in February, and obviously a non-conference schedule, and then obviously the A-Sun era begins. What's going to be the keys for this team and your in to accomplish your internal goals?
I would say our grit. When I think of Team 38, I know we have the talent. I know we have the chemistry. I see it, like, right from the jump. We saw the chemistry. But it's gonna be when you get hit in the gut, how are you gonna respond? Like, what's our grit level? How gritty are we? I always say it used to be we're the hardest working team in the OVC. Well, now we're the hardest working team in the A-Sun, right? And so we're the blue collared kids that we have a chip on our shoulder. And we're gonna show up, and we're gonna show up hard. And I think that's going to be our deal breaker. If we back down to a fight, it's not going to work in our favor, obviously. So it's just keeping those little reminders to them. We're gonna play with the chip on our shoulder. We're gonna be the grittiest team.
Well, we look forward to seeing your team, and I know certainly look forward to the when you see how you'll debut in the A-Sun Conference. But in the meantime, thanks so much for taking the time. I know it's a busy time, but certainly appreciate you coming on the show. Like I said, we look forward to seeing your team, and thanks for being so honest and talk about open about your career and the ups and downs and the journey. It's been a fascinating story, and I'm glad. Thank you for sharing that with us, and hope we do this again.
All right. Thank you for having me.